hold on,
bit
though,
better.
Doyle. The only thing I'll debate you till the cows come home on: how many goals after the 85th minute?
Yeah, no, I'm buying because that matches up with the eyeball test.
He's bought everything. He's a kid in a candy store right here. His mom gave him a $50
money
bill.
bags, Brian Dunseth. What is up, everybody? This is MLS. We're going to get you all set for match day 23. We've got Matt Doyle joining me in studio alongside Taylor Twellman and Kaylin Kyle. Brian Dunseth joining us in just a little bit. And you think this group is spicy? Well, there was some spice coming out of Ricky Pooch this week. Not only is he back in training with the LA Galaxy, their star midfielder back, but he is active on Twitter, and he is keeping receipts, guys, calling us out. All of us, well, except Taylor Twellman and I, who evaded predictions. Kaylin Kyle had them finishing in 10th place. Matt Doyle had the LA Galaxy finishing in 5th. And Pooch saying, we trust you. You are so good at predictions. Enjoy the LA Galaxy this year. He's quick to point out their top in the West.
They're top 3 in the West right now, but we'll talk more about that later, I think.
I mean, we made these predictions without Payne still, without Peck. Ricky Pooch, you didn't do anything last season, so what were we supposed to base our predictions on?
All right, well, if you're wondering what also, he went back and kept receipts all the way back to our match day 3 show in March. And this is what has the guy fired up.
Galaxy back? Is this the question we're really asking after one game where they tied back home? Are they okay? This tells me a couple of things that we're asking this question off the top of the show. One, Galaxy is still the super club in Major League Soccer, the most worldwide known team in MLS. So we are going to talk about them, and they are a big deal. And the league is better when Galaxy are competing for championships. But it also tells me about the expectations we have for this club. They drew at home, and we're asking, are they back? Okay, having said all that, I am optimistic and I am excited for this team.
I hear no lies there from Sasha.
It's always a little worse when it's coming from one of your uncles, from one of your second cousins. That's what Sasha question is to the Galaxy. But with all due respect, Ricky, we got to wait to the end of the year, my man, before you call anyone out. All right,
fair enough. We'll keep receipts of all this, and we'll circle back with you, Ricky, come October. Just you wait. But I'm here for it. I love it. Thank you, Ricky. Keep it coming. The LA Galaxy have looked very good, but a team that has looked even better in the month of June is the New England Revolution. The only team perfect during that month. Yes, drum roll, it's the truth. And in that time, Carlos Gil has been looking like the Carlos Gil that we know. 5 assists, 1 goal, a goal contribution in every game over their 4-game win streak. Taylor, how much of the New England Revolution is if Gil's ticking, the Revs are ticking?
That's an interesting one, because part of me wants to say naturally it's common sense, right? When your best player's operating at a high clip, then the rest of the team is going to fill in the gaps. But I'd argue that the rest of the team hasn't been up to par. Brioni hasn't scored a ton of goals in his time. He has as of late. I think what Caleb Porter's done a wonderful job with Carlos Gil in particular is trying to get him to be tactically disciplined. Our colleague in studio, Matt Doyle, did a wonderful job this past week of talking about where his touches have been. Where have they been? They've been more central, where they can absolutely kill the opposition. Carlos Gil has a little bit of Ladero to him, where he likes to roam, he likes to find the game, he likes to drop deep, he likes to drop wide. And I think for this New England team, if he's a little bit more tactically disciplined, if he's playing more as an old-fashioned number 10, the way Zella Ryan did with Columbus under Caleb Porter, I think then all of a sudden things are going to click. But good on Caleb Porter to find Carlos Gil in the right spot, but more so as a collective, they're playing at a higher level. So I think some of it is Carlos Gil, but I think more so it's the collective playing at a better level than they were earlier on the year.
Look, TT, I was heavily critical of the New England Revolution at the beginning of the season, saying tactically I didn't know what they were playing. They looked lost on the pitch. They didn't look inspired. They didn't look motivated. And when I talked to Caleb Porter in our countdown show midweek, it was the most honest conversation that I think I've heard from him in many, many years. He said, yeah, we weren't good at the beginning of the season. We were missing key pieces. So it got me thinking a little bit. When a new manager does come in, you don't have the players maybe that you want. You're trying to implement a new tactical plan, a new structure. It takes a while to buy in. I put myself in that situation with an expansion team in Seattle, with an expansion team in Orlando. It takes time to develop under a head coach that's trying to implement a brand brand new structure and a playing philosophy. And fair play to Carlos Hill, because he's galvanized this group both on and off the pitch, and you can see it in the fight in the team. This was a pre-match conversation that we had with Caleb Porter, and we saw almost that same, confidence and being honest that he had in the interview, the honesty on the pitch from the players. So obviously they've all bought into him. They've all bought into what they're trying to do with the Revolution. Yes, they've had players come back from injury. So fair play in Veroni as well, just building confidence where we hadn't seen that in him before.
Yeah. But real quick, Jillian, if you think about this, Doyle, what's the number? He's had 5 assists. So what's the obvious answer? Someone's put the ball in the back of the net. And that's the one thing I keep going back to, is that if they had a legitimate number 9, a Vrioni that's playing at a high level, Carlos Hill's going to have 15 assists every single year he plays. It's just a fact. He's created a number of opportunities. Bobby Wood hasn't been healthy. He scored a ton of goals for them last year. So Doyle, for me, it really comes down to if the collective around Carlos Hill is playing 50, 60, 70% better, naturally, he's going to have more assists. His numbers are going to go up.
Yeah, and just on top of that, adding Alija Zivosic in goal has been huge for them.
Agreed.
Adding Xavier Arriaga on the back line has been huge. Getting Dylan Barrero healthy, getting DeJuan Jones healthy and sort of engaged. It's almost like they've added half a starting lineup over the past month, and you can see it in the results.
Caleb Porter will be going up against the team that he brought an MLS Cup to in 2020, his former side in the Columbus Crew, also in fantastic form right now. Winners of 5 of the last 6. And this is a side that seems to handle whatever's thrown at them, Doyle. We have Aiden Morris now moving onward. This is a team that was competing in CONCACAF Champions Cup final just a month ago. GM Tim Bezbatchenko moving on, but yet no hangover. How surprised are you by that?
I mean, at this point, I'm not, right? Because Columbus have handled all the stuff that you mentioned that's been thrown out at them over the past year and a half since Wilfried Nancy has taken over. And don't forget, in the middle of all that was a suspension to their best player, Cucho Hernandez, this man who scored a hat trick this past week. And he wasn't happy about it. And we heard from several sources that some of the players in the clubhouse weren't happy about it, but they all still stayed together. And they all went, they went on a 4-game winning streak on the road in the build-up to the CONCACAF Champions Cup final while rotating their squad and using guys from the academy and from Columbus Crew 2 in MLS Next Pro. It's a new blueprint. It is just the ability to take everyone from the ground up and work them into the lineup and set expectations. And all the players, clearly 1 through 30 on that roster, buy into it. And I think they're the best team in the league right now. I know they're not at the top of the Supporters Shield standings, but I think this is the best team in the league because of that mentality.
Better than Miami when Messi and Suarez are there?
I think so, yeah.
I got to disagree with you, Doyle, on that. Is the best team in Major League Soccer. I think they play a beautiful brand of football, but I think the loss of Aiden Morris in the midfield is a huge loss to them. A 22-year-old that is now in Europe, that has won 2 MLS Cup rings. I look at LAFC, and I would put them ahead of Columbus Crew right now because that's a huge void to fill. Then you have someone like a Darlington Nagbe. He's not getting younger. He's getting older, and that's an MLS veteran that has taken that team to multiple championships, and he's done it on numerous teams. So I think with the loss of Aiden Morris, you bring in Azeel Jackson. I don't think he's the right fit for this team. It's 2 different, very playing philosophies. He's been with 2 teams in the last 3 years, which tells me something for a 22-year-old. Can you rely on him like you can rely on Aiden Morris? I think it's a huge, huge void to fill for them, and they're going to need to go out
different
and
position, though, Kaylin, right? Like Azeel Jackson is going to play on that 2 line underneath the forward. Like it'll be Sean Zawadzki coming in to play in place of Aiden Morris. And we've seen Zawadzki be trusted in the biggest games, literally, that can be played on the continent. Like, that's the magic of Wilfried Nancy. The way they play is beautiful.
You literally cannot even put the 2 in the same tier.
Okay. We'll find out.
I don't think. Yeah.
What do you think, Taylor?
Regarding what? Zawadzki playing as a center midfielder, or Columbus being the best team, or both?
Both.
I love the way Columbus go about it. I think this is a very interesting summer about their identity, their mentality. You lose Tim Bezbatchenko, and I know everyone watching this is saying he has nothing to do with anything on the field. However, there is a leadership quality there that he went out and got Wilfried Nancy. He went out and signed some of these players. He set up the tone of the pro pathway from MLS Next Pro, all the way up. But my word, Wilfried Nancy is one of the few managers in this league that coaches player 24 and player 1 at the same clip. And what I mean by that,
He's going to get more out of you no matter where you are in the pecking order. Aiden Morris is a massive loss. Kalen, you are 100% correct. But if there's one manager in this league that can shape this team, figure it out, and I said this publicly and I'll stay there, A.Z. Jackson is going to be good for Columbus. It's just what Wilfried Nancy does. He's going to play wide. He's going to play in the same ways that other players had. Remember, Baton had how many assists under Caleb Porter? How many has he got under Wilfried Nancy? He will coach A.Z. Jackson up. But as long as you got Cucho Hernandez, and Cucho Hernandez is playing at a high clip, they've got a game changer. And I would be shocked at the end of the day with where Cincinnati's dealing with injuries if Columbus doesn't have something to say about the #1 seed in the East.
Perfect segue. FC Cincinnati dealing with injuries is an understatement. They have been bitten by the injury bug and right in the defense. The latest, Nick Hagelin breaking his fibula this past weekend. That coming days after Pat Noonan reveals that his reigning MLS Defender of the Year, Matt Miazga, needs knee surgery. Miles Robinson over at Copa America now could be playing at the Olympics should they go on to the final. That means Miles Robinson is not back until mid-August. Hagelin and Miazga multiple months, 2 to 3 at a minimum. Doyle, Cincinnati now down to 2 center backs. They play a 3-back system. What is the best path forward for Pat Noonan?
Well, not what they did last week. And Pat Noonan, to his credit, put his hand up after that game and said, I got the starting lineup wrong. He tried Alvis Powell and DeAndre Yedlin as center backs in the back three. It didn't work. Right now, you just got to hold it together with basically duct tape and, popsicle sticks at this point until the transfer window opens, and then GM Chris Albright has to do some work in the transfer window. I was just looking for guys who are out of contract. Can you get a player to come to Cincinnati on the kind of discount that we've seen veterans come to Miami or LA or New York in the past on? Matt Hummels is out of contract, Nacho Fernandez, Simon Scher. Like, these guys have been at the top of the game in Europe for a long time. They're all in their mid-30s. None of them are retiring. Can they come to MLS and fit right in and command the back line? Because, look, losing Nick Hagelin, that's tough. He's a good player. Matt Miazga is the guy who organizes the back line. That's what they need to replace. And Miles Robinson hasn't ever really done that. He's a really good player. He hasn't ever really done that. Obviously, Kip Keller, Ian Murphy, they're not that type of player. So they need that commanding presence, and I think that means the transfer market.
I mean, this was the best defense in the league for months.
Yeah, no.
It was, and it was what? They gave up 11 goals in their first 14 games. They've given up 12 in their last 5. And so, Matt, you were asking a bunch of us here at MLS, who's the front runner for the Supporter Shield, as you're doing an interesting article coming up, which is going to be very interesting to see what people said. I would have wrote 100% unequivocally FC Cincinnati. At the time you asked, 2 games in hand. They had Miles Robinson returning because the rumor of the Olympics wasn't there. It's there now, and good on Chris Albright and Pat Noonan to say that's up to Miles Robinson. I'm going to be intrigued to see what decision he makes. But to lose the reigning MLS Defender of the Year, I'll be shocked if he comes back in 2024. And then Miles Robinson, potential for Olympics, and Hagelin. You had 5 center backs. Now you've got, what, maybe 2.5? We read all these rumors about what FC Cincinnati wanted to do this summer. Mark my words, Chris Albright has to reverse course, because if they find a way to fill those holes, you're still talking about a real difficult team to beat, and they've got a game changer in Acosta going the other way. They've got to find a center back or 2, and I think they're going to look outside of MLS to do so, Matt.
The wild card in all this is the status of Aaron Bupenza, the DP number 9, who we all kind of think is probably played his last game for FC Cincinnati. If they're able to part ways with him when that window opens, then they will have a ton of flexibility and could go way outside the box in a direction that none of us could probably think of at this point.
FC Cincinnati travels to Dallas this weekend. Now let's head out west. The San Jose Earthquakes, who have recently parted ways with Luchi Gonzalez. We'll discuss that later on in the show. Playing host to the LA Galaxy. And as Andrew Wiebe pointed out on MLS Wrap-Up, this is incredible. The Galaxy have strung together 3 wins for the first time under Greg Vanney, who's been there for 3.5 seasons. And they do it with Ricky Puig out injured up until this point. Kaylin, what did the Galaxy prove over that 3-game stretch?
They went out and they got good wingers at the beginning of the season. That's what this comes down to. And then you do have Diego Fagundez in the midfield that has been impeccable stepping into that role. But what Greg Vanney has always done. You saw it at Toronto when they had the winning team. You saw it when he did come to LA Galaxy. He wants to play in that 4-3-3. He has to have good wingers. He has to have good service from wide areas. And he hasn't had that in the LA Galaxy since he's got the managerial role there. They got out and they got Paintsill. They've gotten Peck, two incredible left and right foot wingers that can roll inside, that can add balance to this team, that can stretch the team as well. We hadn't seen that with the Galaxy. We hadn't seen players get behind a back four, which frustrated a player like Riqui Puig that had to drop deep into the midfield to pick up the ball from the back line because he wasn't getting it high up the pitch. They have structure now. It's gone back to old Greg Vanney ways that we saw at Toronto FC, and fair play to him, because the one thing that I loved, I know I'm Canadian, but when he was in Toronto, it was a beautiful style of football, and that's why they ended up winning it.
Can we play a drinking game in the word Toronto with Kaylin Kyle every time we have her on, please? I would be so here for that.
Chugging maple syrup.
Anything Canadian, baby.
Not maple syrup.
Poutine?
The structure point is the good point that I think we all have to focus on with LA, because they look like a different team at times this year. At their best, their structure in possession is so much better than it was at any other point during the Greg Vanney era. The one thing I worry about, though, is when Riqui Puig comes back, what happens to that structure? Because all the stuff we were talking about in the first segment about Carlos Gil and sometimes Zelarayan in the past or Nico Ladero, Riqui goes everywhere. Riqui goes everywhere and forces the entire team to adjust to him, and he's a brilliant player, and you want him on the ball, but you want him on the ball within that structure, because if there's no structure and he loses the ball, then it doesn't matter how good your defense is, you're going to give up transition goals. We have seen it time and time again, and that is where Diego Fagundes has really helped, because he has been structured and disciplined filling in for Riqui Puig in central midfield. That's the magic that I think Greg Vanney is going to have to figure out how to weave when his best player comes back into the lineup.
I also think that exact conversation is perhaps what had Riqui Puig so fired up on MLS Wrap-Up, when that's what Sasha Kljestan called for, that it's Puig now who has to come and fit into this system that has worked over this 3-game span, or is it the other way around? Taylor, what do you think?
Well, I said at the beginning of the year, and some of the people within Major League Soccer were very confused when I brought up the first game between LAFC and LA Galaxy this year. And I said, if you watch the center backs of the LA Galaxy, when the ball goes out of bounds or the ball's not in their end, they're screaming at Riqui Puig. Now, listen, it's fine if you have a player that goes and finds the game. That only works, though, if your two center backs are completely comfortable defending one-on-one, defending by themselves, completely isolated in the moment. This is where Seattle, through the years with Nicolas Ladero, did a very good job of understanding he's not in the structure. So if he's going to go chase the game, then we've got to have a chameleon of sorts, and like Christian Roldan. That's where Diego Fagundes has helped Greg Vanney. The structure is there, and it is there when Riqui Puig is not. But he's one of the best players in this league. And so I said this in week 3 or 4 of the season. I'm going to say it again. Greg Vanney has to find the best collection of players that allows Riqui Puig to be him, but also allows everyone else to succeed. And if he doesn't, then you're in a little bit of a conundrum, and you're going to tactically have to find a way to get Riqui Puig on the field, but also not lose the structure completely. But we've been talking about this from day one. I just find it ironic that all of a sudden now we're coming to a point going, oh, that's why they've won 3 games in a row. Structure is massive for a team.
That was the biggest issue at Barcelona with him, is structurally he couldn't fit into their system, and that's one of their biggest things is, yes, they have the individual flair players. So how much can they keep doing that with the player? Yes, he's one of the best players in Major League Soccer, but if they continue to win without him in this lineup, and if he can't buy into structurally being sound within the team, how much do you trust him if you're Greg Vanney?
Yeah, but I can change my system. I can change my formation to allow Riqui Puig to float and to integrate in there, but also provide comfort and stability through the middle of the park. There's multiple ways to skin a cat with this. I don't think you can look at it from the LA Galaxy or Greg Vanney's perspective and say, we're going to win MLS Cup and Riqui Puig is coming off the bench. No way. No chance. Especially if Marco Reus is on his way as well. But they're going to have to find a way to get structure into Riqui Puig and into the LA Galaxy, because proof's in the pudding. They've won 3 in a row with structure in the system.
Taylor, question for you. We know Puig is keeping receipts. Do we think we have what you said back in the beginning of the season? Do you think you have that in his arsenal?
Say that again?
I said, do you think he has in his arsenal what you said at the beginning of the season? Come on, Ricky, bring
absolutely
that back.
I do.
This guy's on your side.
He cannot be that good of a player and then see this team while you're sitting out. We've all been there that have played the game. When you're injured and the team starts winning, you come back, you're chomping at the bit. You want to get back into the thing. You want to get back into the winning ways. My money's on Ricky Pooch being able to figure it out. I just think Greg Vanney may have to change some things to allow this team that's won 3 in a row to flourish, but also get one of the best 10s in the league back on the field.
Well, Ricky, stop tweeting at us and go and watch film of structure a little bit more.
Keep tweeting at us. Keep tweeting at us. But he's got an important game, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Cali Classico on MLS Season Pass. A fantastic run of form here on This Is MLS for Brian Dunseth, back-to-back appearances for you here on the show. Thanks for joining us, Dunny. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Last time I said I was going to throw a curveball at TT about my All-Star pick, and it was Bogusz from LAFC, and he said I just hit that 500 yards into in left field. He wasn't happy with it, so looking forward to this chat.
I said foul ball. All I said was foul ball. You hit it 500 yards. It just was foul ball.
Wicked yard. Wicked yard.
So good form for Dunny. Can't say the same for the teams coming up in this matchup. New York City FC taking on Orlando. New York City in 6th place in the East. Orlando in 9th. New York City, after 5 wins in a row, they have now lost 3 straight since May. Orlando City, 2 wins, and they are over Chicago and San Jose. So, Taylor, I'm going to paint this picture for you. You're jumping into the Atlantic Ocean, and you have to pick a life vest. And one is New York City, and the other one is Orlando. Which one are you picking?
I'm dead. I'm out. All today.
I'm dead.
I mean, listen, I on this program, I missed this one big. I had Orlando City going to be in a real running for the #1 seed in the East. And quite honestly, that would turn into the Supporters Shield race. When I had talked to so many coaches and front office people in the offseason, they all looked at the way Orlando City ended last year, the way they came together, the way Oscar Pereira and the front office got new deals, everything had come together, and it felt like this was going to be the run. And then I was in Miami for the 2nd game of the year, and they lost 5-0. And I've got their run of results since then. It's 5 wins in 20 games. 5 wins. They've won 1 game in their last 7, and it was against Chicago. So you asked me to have to pick one. I'm going to take the young, inexperienced New York City team. And the reason why is they've shown the propensity to go on a stretch where they won 8 of 9 games. I get it. They've lost 3 in a row twice this year. But you guys got to follow me here. Sometimes, and Dunny, you know this, when you're inexperienced, you're raw, you're young, sometimes you don't know. And so you're going to have peaks and valleys. And right now they're in a valley. But they've also had some real peaks. And they've had a real strong run of results. If I had to pick one of these two, I think I'm taking New York City, Dunny.
Yeah, I think I'm doing this. I'm putting hands on both of these life jackets and just holding on for dear life. Listen, I think NYCFC, they had a bad week, right? And when you have a bad week and there's 3 games in that bad week, things look horrific. But to your point, the previous 11 games, I thought they were in really strong form. Now, for Nick Cushing, I think the interesting conversation now is, okay, who's my 9, right? Who's my guy? When you think about where the goals are coming from, Martinez coming off the bench, he gets 3 in like 5 minutes, so his stats are a little bit more boosted. But the reality for me, TT, and we've played in this league for years upon years, those smaller dimensions, the home field advantage, playing at Yankee Stadium, for me, it's got to be 10-plus wins. You got to be looking at 35 points at home. So with a couple of wobbles and going away from home, and again, it's not a learning curve per se, but it's tightening the screws in matches in which you should walk away with points. I still think NYCFC right now is the better team currently. But I also played with Oscar Pereira in both New England and in Dallas, and I know his mentality. And to your point, I was in the same boat. I wish Ricky Pooch could kind of maybe tweet that I had Orlando City so high and I was dead wrong, and now they're as low as they are. But with Maguire, Muriel up top, Facundo starting to score goals out wide, all of a sudden a little bit of bite. And as Matt Doyle was talking about earlier this week, the disconnect of defending with 5 and allowing the front 5 to get going. If they build momentum, I'd be really intrigued to see what Orlando City looks like when we start talking about a playoff race, a serious playoff race.
I'm still with you guys. I would take NYCFC over Orlando right now, but I think you just hit on the case for Orlando City, Dunny. It's that, first of all, we've seen Oscar Pareja do this before. He has a long and storied history as a manager in this league. Multiple times his teams have turned it around midseason, including last year. They weren't particularly good at this point last year. Now, they weren't as bad as they've been this season, but they were much better in the second half of the season, for one. And for two, over the past couple of weeks, they've shifted to kind of a 4-4-2 with an offset central midfield with Ladero playing higher than Cesar Araujo, and then the wide players, Torres on one side and Angulo playing on the other side, playing very high, right? So it's almost like a 4-2-4. They've gotten a lot more out of it going forward than any other formation we've seen this year. They're still vulnerable defensively, but this team, if they figure out how to get that firepower, how to get those guys all on the same page, which we're starting to see the kernels of, this team could sneak their way into the playoffs. I'm still taking NYCFC, though. I just wanted to make that case for Orlando.
And I'd be shocked if Duncan McGuire's with this team after the summer transfer window comes, because I think there are teams in the championship, lower Premier League teams that are going to look at it, and I think Orlando City is going to do good by Duncan McGuire.
Heading out west, 5th place Minnesota United taking on 6th place Portland Timbers. Phil Neville's side looking to make it 3 in a row, and a big part of their success as of late has been Jonathan Rodriguez this season. Dunny, how would you score this signing by the Timbers?
Ooh, underrated, I think, with regards to the bigger conversation of what this has looked like in 2024. Listen, Portland has always proven that they are capable of going out and spending money when the right player is there. But I think all of us were really intrigued by this signing because in the beginning, when you're playing him as a 0.9, you're not seeing the same elements of the amount of success he had down at Liga MX. But I think the byproduct of pushing him out wide and having as much success as he is having on that left-hand side, and by the way, the durability, the up and down, the defensive prowess, he's not afraid to track, not afraid to get stuck in. I think it really becomes a conversation about Felipe Mora. Felipe Mora coming back, Felipe Mora being healthy, Felipe Mora being ruthless in the final third, Evander pulling the strings underneath. We thought Anthony on that right-hand side would be the answer and productivity, but it's Santiago Moreno as well. But I think this addition, this acquisition checks all the boxes for a player that fits the pieces of the puzzle in terms of not just the individual, but how he makes the collective better.
And Dunny, good on Phil Neville. The many conversations I had with him this offseason when he was looking at this job, he took this job, he kept asking me, what's the one position this Portland Timbers team needs, in my opinion? I said a 9. When he signed Rodriguez, I said, he's not a 9. He's a goal scorer, but he's not a 9. And so he had to play his way, coach his way through this to then realize Rodriguez has to play wide left. Now, Felipe Mora coming back fit, playing healthy, playing at a high level, that gives him the freedom to do that. I still think there's a concern for this team on the back line. I think they give away too many chances. How long can you ride Diego Chara? I can't believe we're calling him Chara now because it was Diego Chara for years, but make no mistake about it, that's apparently what we're doing now. But the point being is, can you rely on him in those legs for that much longer? I think those are things Phil Neville and Ned Gravovoy are going to have to address this summer. But Jonathan Rodriguez is a goal scorer. He's just not a 9. And I think when they signed him, it was mislabeled as what kind of player is going to be. He has now shown the ability, if I'm not mistaken, what's he got, 12, 13 goal contributions, which all in all, in your first 16, 17 games in this league, good on you. But he's got to play wide left in order to be successful, and Phil Neville's done that.
As for Minnesota United, they are experiencing their first back-to-back losses now, 3 in a row under new manager Eric Ramsey. We know that they have key players away with international duty, but how much of this, Doyle, comes down to teams starting to figure out Minnesota United?
I think it comes down to the absences. I really does. If you think about it, what is the point of soccer? It's to create value in the attacking zone, in the 18, and to deny value to the opposing teams in the 18. And the guys who are at the locus of where that value is created is your number 9 on one side and your goalkeeper on the other side. Well, the number 9 was Tani Oluwaseyi, who came from, he was drafted a couple of years ago, was awesome on loan in USL Championship, and won the starting job by being more productive on a per 90 basis than any other attacker in the league outside of Lionel Messi. That's how good Tani Oluwaseyi was on one end, and then on the other end, it was Dane St. Clair, and even year Dane St. Clair is basically Lev Yashin. He's incredible goalkeeper in even years, and that has been the case once again this year. Well, they lose both those guys to international duty with Canada, and all of a sudden, their record goes in the toilet. It's personnel.
Hey, Doyle, I didn't have Yashin on my bingo card. I just wanted you to know that. That's a good drop right there. Listen, I did the game with Max Bretos, 2 Saturdays ago up in Seattle. And when we were talking to Eric Ramsey, we were talking about kind of challenges like this. When he came to Major League Soccer, he was acutely aware there's going to be certain situations during the international window where they were going to play through it. They were one of many teams that had a bad 3-game week in Major League Soccer. But what I found was interesting is Eric Ramsey, he's so intelligent and so well-spoken. He was talking about embracing the challenge. And embracing the challenge, to your point, Matt, about playing younger players, not really caring what the age, the ball doesn't understand that. He wanted to embrace the challenge by giving these younger players the opportunity to really bleed into the experience of what's necessary, whether that's at home or on the road. They knew they were going to Seattle in a situation where Seattle needed to win, right? The pressure was on Smets. The pressure was on the players on the field not producing in a consistent manner. And yet he wanted this team to understand what the cauldron, the 50th anniversary, what that night looked like, and how would they deal with it. Now, Padelford goes down in the first 6 seconds, that horrible collision with Alex Roldan. Things even went more sideways than they were preparing for. But the equity, Taylor, is the 29 points. The 29 points has given them that buffer to deal with bad weeks like they just had this last week.
It has. I just feel like we may have overstated Minnesota United. I good on them, but anytime you get late goals and that well runs dry, now you've got to find a way to grind out results through, you know what I mean? There's just, I think they may come back to the mean a little bit. I'm not saying they're going to be what I thought they would be. I think they've outkicked that coverage and then some, but this summer they've got to go out and sign depth. If it shows you that you lose 3 players, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. You want your players to play at the international level because that tells you your club, your franchise, and everything else is doing something well. But you've got to have depth. And that academy hasn't done anything. I'm not saying they should have done anything, but if you're not bringing up anything through the academy, you got to go out and get deep. You got to get some players that can fill in the gaps. I just wonder if we overstated Minnesota United a little bit.
To that point, Taylor, their underlying numbers haven't changed. They're still the same team last week that they were 2 months ago. The difference is Tani and Dane St. Clair were winning those big high leverage moments game after game after game. And that, even for the best teams, that is unsustainable. You have to have.
Yeah, but how many? Hold on,
though,
Doyle. The only thing I'll debate you till the cows come home on. How many goals after the 85th minute?
Yeah.
If you rely on the 85th minute drama, at some point you're going to hit a wall. It can't happen every game. You've got to find a way to do everything else. So I get that you're 100% correct. The analytics tell you they're operating at the same clip, but they're not getting the 85th minute on goals. If you don't get those, you're not going to get points.
Let's go down the coast now, shall we, to Los Angeles, California. LAFC hosting the Colorado Rapids. LAFC, Real Salt Lake, and the LA Galaxy all even at that top spot in the Western Conference on 37 points. LAFC, though, the best home team in the league at 8 wins. Some calling them now the best team in MLS. Right now, are they, Dunny?
It's a good debate. It's a good conversation. I think they have to be in that conversation right now as one, if not the best team, one of the best teams. Let me paint a quick picture. Taylor, we're at MLS Cup. It's in Columbus. 5 starters not on the roster to start the season. 2 substitutes in that game, not on the roster to start this season, and hiccups to start the beginning of this season. And yet with the addition of Chanot, who I wasn't really sure would be a solution, he has been a key part in kind of the continued build-up, at least having options at center back. Kai Kamara obviously scoring a couple goals recently and overtaking Landon Donovan. Matty Bogusz playing in the false 9 and having a fantastic year. Denny Bouanga being Denny Bouanga. Kike Oliveira starting to heat up and score goals in terms of trying to match what we initially had expectations of over on that right-hand side. The summer's Olivier Giroud, as you've said, Taylor, many occasion, an opportunity for maybe another big addition to this group. I just think right now they're humming. And the experience of disappointment in 3 finals last year, I'm intrigued to see how they manage throughout the course of 2024.
The Giroud addition was something that has been on my radar, not just because he's such a great player, but because he's a different archetype of center forward compared to what Steve Cherundolo has preferred to use over the past couple of years. I mean, as you said, Matty Bogusz has been fantastic playing as a false nine. He couldn't be more different from Olivier Giroud and how he plays the position. Well, what we've seen over the past couple of weeks is Kai Kamara start getting more minutes as a true number 9. And Kai is the same archetype of target man that Giroud is. Obviously a different sort of skill level, but the same type of forward. And what we've seen with Kai on the field last week especially, I think he was on the field for 160 minutes. They outscored opponents 7-2. With him on the field. And I thought that Dennis Bouanga was able to play a little bit higher playing off of Kai Kamara as a center forward because Kai occupies the center backs in a different way. It looks really good, and it bodes to get even better on July 18th when the transfer window opens and that big signing, the one we've all been looking forward to for months now, when the big man arrives.
Colorado Rapids, 4th in the Western Conference. Taylor, is there anything that they can do against LAFC that would prove to you that the Colorado Rapids are MLS Cup contenders?
Yeah, win the game. I mean, to state the obvious, right? You're on the road. If you were on the road at LAFC, at BMO Stadium in that environment, and you win the game, then you're going to get people like myself to believe a little bit more in what you're doing. Listen, good on Chris Armas. He has really turned this team around. I think Cole Bassett's been really good. I think Mihailovic has been fantastic, even with the gifts from Roman Berkey against St. Louis City. But the last 3 results, they beat Austin, they beat St. Louis City, they beat Montreal. The 4 before that, they lost to Salt Lake City, Real Salt Lake. Minnesota, they tied. They lost to the Houston Dynamo. They lost to Vancouver. Where am I going with all this rambling? I need to see them have a good performance against a better opponent. I get what Austin, St. Louis City, and Montreal represent, teams that Colorado wouldn't win last year in 3 games in a row, but you're on the road against LAFC, more than likely in the Western Conference playoffs. This is the kind of game you're going to have to win and get out a result and grind a result. I think we're going to learn a lot about the Colorado Rapids this weekend, and I'm with Dunny. I think LAFC's in the conversation. The last 13 games they've played, they've won 9 of those. And when Giroud shows up and potentially another DP, I think they're in the conversation and potentially for winning the Supporters Shield. So if Colorado beats them this weekend, you're going to get my attention.
Major implications for LAFC ahead as well. Colorado Rapids, of course, but then El Tráfico at LA Galaxy the week after. Taylor Twellman will be on the call for that one. As for this week, you got Brian Dunseth and Max Brados. 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on MLS Season Pass. Brian Dunseth, I hope you brought your wallet, your calculator, all of your things, because we are going to introduce you to buying or selling. Matt Doyle gives us the numbers, and you tell us if you're buying or selling. Let's start off with Atlanta United hosting Toronto FC. Atlanta United, Doyle, going for their first home win since March.
Yeah, it's been a while. Our number is 77, as in Thiago Almada is in the 77th percentile this year in expected assists per 90, which is pretty good. Last year, he was in the 99th percentile. His debut year, 2022, he was in the 85th percentile. All of this is by way of saying that Almada is still a talented player, but he has not quite been good enough, frankly, for Atlanta United this year. And we know that he has interest from European teams. We know that he will be away with Argentina during the Olympics. And it seems like the chance is here for Atlanta to sort of remake their team on the fly, which might not be a bad idea because what we've seen from the little number 10 this year is that maybe not a championship level player for the Five Stripes.
I'll buy it. I think I'm good with other people's money, even though I'm spending my own right now. But it's also, Doyle, because I'm not believing in what Toronto FC is right now. It was a great start to the season. I think it's 1 win in its last 9, a team that's heavily reliant on Insigne and Bernardeschi. Both of these 2 players having issues maybe both on and off the field, whether you're talking about injuries or you're talking about staying on the field for the full 90 minutes. I don't know. Doyle, I go back a year ago and the splash that Atlanta United made with regards to really strengthening this squad and trying to take it to the next level. Obviously a coaching change. Now we're seeing Garth Lagerwey take things into his own hands. They need results. And I think that right now They're nowhere close to matching expectations, but as we've seen in the past 10 days, how quickly the fortunes can change with a little bit of momentum and 3 points in the back pocket.
What do you got for Toronto FC?
Yeah, our number is 5th. That's where TFC are in the number of 1v1s attempted. Their game plan is to make the field wide and let Bernardeschi and Insigne, who you just mentioned, Dunny, let them cook in isolation. So they've done that a lot, but they're only 20th in the league in key passes following a successful 1v1. Key pass is a pass that leads to a shot. The final ball hasn't reliably been there, and the runs haven't reliably been there, and it's all added up to an attack that's kind of been stuck in the mud over the past 2 months, which I think you just referenced right there. So I'm going to assume you're buying this one, Dunny.
Yeah, I'll buy that one. I'm intrigued. You know what I do like? I like a John Herdman that's got a little swagger, right? He's got that smile, that Cheshire cat. The shoulders start bopping in the post game. That's what they need. They need these players to match the performance of the expectation. So I'm buying what you're selling with Toronto right now.
Vancouver taking on St. Louis City. First meeting of the season. What do you got on the Whitecaps?
Yeah, our number is 5.9. That's the number of touches in the box Brian White got per 90 last year with the Caps, which was one of the highest marks in the league. Of course, Brian White was the highest scoring non-DP in the league last year. This year, he's down about 35% to about 3.8 touches in the box per game, which is low for an attacker, especially low for a center forward. It's a massive issue. I think it has less to do with Brian White than it does with the kind of dysfunctional central midfield and wingback core that we've seen from Vancouver so far this year.
You buying that?
Yes, I'm going like this. Yes, because with what I've seen from Vanni Sartini's men, when they're good, they're really good. But when they're bad, my God, they're really bad. And what I've noticed this year is Vanni at times, and maybe this is specific to the LAFC game at BMO Stadium, where he just egotistically chose not to change that back three. The wing backs were getting eaten alive. Obviously, it was Kike Oliveira and Denny Bouanga on the night. Bogusz was pulling them apart. But to your point, listen, I thought Fafa Picault coming in was a solid addition. I thought you could still squeeze the lemon with Damir Kreilach and see, and you've gotten a couple goals from him, but nowhere near the amount of minutes that I maybe expected Dami to have in this team, this role. But Ryan Gauld and Brian White, if those two don't have that connectivity at a high rate, it's going to be a tough season for Vancouver.
And we're seeing like the way that Vanni Sartini has tried to address it in recent months is by playing Brian White more as a lone forward and dropping Ryan Gauld into central midfield, which, okay, Ryan Gauld's your best player. You want him on the ball more. But what made Vancouver so good last year was that combo up top. It was when they switched to a 3-5-2 with Gauld as a second forward running off of Brian White that I think they hit a new level, and they've completely lost that this year.
Vancouver 9th in the West, St. Louis City 13th.
Yeah, our number for St. Louis City is 4.4. That's the number of shots on goal Roman Bürki is facing per game this year, which is actually down quite a bit from last year. It was 5.1. Bürki hasn't been as otherworldly as he was as a shot stopper last season, but he's still, by the numbers, one of the handful of best goalkeepers in MLS. So I don't think he's been the problem, and honestly, neither really has the defense. I actually think the defense for St. Louis City is playing better than they did last year. The issue with this team, last year they scored 63 goals on 43 expected goals. This year they have 25 goals on 25 expected goals. They just are exactly who the numbers say they are. Last year was a mirage.
My number was wrong, though. They're not 13th, they're 12th. Dunny? Buying or selling?
I'm still trying to wrap my... Yeah, I'm buying it, but it's only because I can't figure out what in the world is happening this year with St. Louis City. I had them top 3. I thought they were going to pick up right where they left off. I actually think they were stronger with the addition of Durkin, with Totland. I think they identified what they needed. But maybe, how do I want to arc this? I think what they did was they turned losses into draws, draws into wins. This year it's the opposite, right? You feel like they're going to walk away with 3 points, turns into a draw. You feel like they've got the draw, at least they'll feel good about the point, kind of turns into a loss. Maybe Joaquini is a bigger loss than we expected. I think we all, at the start of the year, was like, okay, Sam Adeniran, this is going to be great. A healthy Joao Klaus. We saw what he was capable of doing. Celio Pompeo is an incredible talent. Obviously, he goes down injured. And I still can't wrap my head around them walking away from AZ Jackson. I was a part of that broadcast when he got his first cap against Slovenia in January. I thought the sky's the limit. I know statistically, Doyle, he wasn't anywhere close to having, quote unquote, a free role in the attacking phase of play. But I got to tell you, I was shocked that they let him go to Columbus.
In the East, 11th place, Philadelphia Union taking on 14th place, Montreal.
Yeah, our number is 29th. That's where Montreal are dead last in progressive passes hit per 90. And it's actually kind of shocking because they went out this winter and they hired Laurent Courtois from the Columbus Crew. He had been the head coach of the Crew too, and then an assistant under Wilfried Nancy, to bring in that sort of blueprint back to Montreal. And the Crew, by the way, are first in the league in progressive passes. So either Courtois sort of slow playing the team's evolution into the Canadian version of the Crew, or he's just scrapped the blueprint at this point, because they look nothing like we thought they would look in terms of how they use the ball so far this season, and I think it's killing them.
Yeah, Doyle, I would agree with you. I did the game, their final game for those 7 to start the season away from home, and I thought, well, they had the mentality. They'd gone to Miami. They got a win. I think it was cruel the way they lost in Chicago when Kellen Acosta kicked that ball into the wind, and it just took and ended up getting, with a touch bit of bad luck with refereeing on the night. And I said, okay, you have a system, you have an identity, and maybe the benefit for Laurent Courtois was having the group together on the road for such a long period, because you're thinking about tactics, you're thinking about mentality, you're thinking about the connectivity and verbally being able to have your hands in the group. I mean, when you're signing these players, when you have impact foreign players that you're signed and you think, okay, these are going to be my starters, these are the guys on the bench the last couple of matches, that you're looking at Mason Toye on one side. Obviously, Ibrahim's a fantastic player. Opoku isn't the Opoku that he was at LAFC. Things just don't look right. It doesn't feel right, and they've got to get on track really, really quickly. Whatever the havoc is behind the scenes, they got to make sure that that doesn't affect the performance on the field.
What about Jim Curtin's side?
Yeah, our number is 17.3. That was the average shot distance in meters that Philly allowed last season, which was a top 6 mark in the league. This year, that gap has narrowed. They're 16.1 meters allowed per shot, which is a bottom 10 mark in the league. Now, there's a lot of other things going wrong with the Philadelphia Union, but if you want to boil their struggles, especially defensively, down to one number, I think that's the one. They're allowing better chances closer to the goal more often than they did last year, than they did the year before, than they did the year before that. And it's the biggest reason, well, one of the biggest reasons why we have seen this massive drop-off for the Philadelphia Union in 2024.
Buying or selling that, Donnie?
Yeah, no, I'm buying because that matches up with the eyeball test.
He's bought everything. He's a kid in a candy store right here. His mom gave him a $50
money
bill.
bags, Brian Dunseth.
You want to know why? It's because when Doyle goes into analytics, especially the deep analytics, I really have to think about what he's saying, because 3 semesters at Cal State Fullerton without declaring a major only got me so far in my education career. You know what I'd love to see the stat is isolated defending 1v1 moments. And when, especially whether it's Glesnes or it's Elliott or isolated 1v1.
I'm going to interrupt you, Dunny, and tell you, I actually looked that up yesterday because I was interested as well. The numbers are the same year over year. The numbers are the same. And I was shocked by that because my eye test is the same. I know what you're going to say. Jakob Glesnes has gotten absolutely annihilated in transition defensively. My eye test says the same. The numbers aren't showing that yet. But I interrupted you. Keep buying.
There's no one more committed to the numbers.
Yeah, well, we can get into. I still have a couple questions about XG, left foot, right foot possession in the attacking phase of play, but that's a conversation for another day.
Please not.
I just think I know. When we talk about goalkeepers, we talk about center backs, we talk about defensive midfielders, we talk about selling attacking players. We think about what future investment is versus the verbalizing of the head coach and the frustration of current players. This group has to figure it out quickly, or we're going to be talking about the same thing we've talked about a couple of different teams in Major League Soccer over the years, is have they hung on 1 year too long?
All right. On that note, Dunny, put that fat wallet away. It's when the game gets a little bit simpler. It is just time.
I don't think his wallet's that fat anymore. He bought everything I was throwing out there.
This credit card.
He's got way more.
I was tapping. Yeah, I was tapping.
Just time for some rapid, quick fire. What comes to mind when you think about Charlotte visiting Houston this weekend?
Oh, Benny Olsen's side. I was just down there. Benny Olsen's group right now, and we're going to talk about Seba Ferreira and getting his hat trick, knowing that Ponce's right around the corner. Benny Olsen kind of talking about Ponce in a way that he was referencing Chicho Arango and what's happening at Real Salt Lake. So that's coming. But Seba getting probably infuriated, saying, hold on a second, I want to be in the shop window. I want to be a guy as well. I think Walczak has been incredible playing in that false nine. I think Bossy has been incredible kind of playing in underneath. I think they're firing in all cylinders. And dare I say, they're kind of getting back to the mentality that once was the heyday of the Houston Dynamo, meaning that if you come to Shell Energy Stadium, don't even think about walking away with points. The flip side for Dean Smith and company, this Charlotte team, does Ricky Pooch have access to predictions for Charlotte? Because I think a lot of us got it wrong. I think I picked them in 8th place, and all of a sudden I started getting text messages and calls from reporters in Charlotte saying, why? Like, why do you believe in them? And I think ownership, I think Dean Smith, I think Miles Joseph addition, I think Aaron Hyde experience, Pamu Dukas understanding what the league is. So the simplicity of managing this group, getting them acclimated, big-time goalkeeper, big-time back line with, 9 clean sheets so far this season. You've very, very dynamic attacking players. Whatever happens with Swiderski, that's going to be interesting. You still have spots to be made. But, yeah, Houston, this is going to be a big one for them at home because they need to continue to pick up places in the Western Conference.
Another important game for the New York Red Bulls at home. The only team in MLS yet to lose at home. That's right. It's the New York Red Bulls as they welcome DC United. 1 win away from home. I-95 Derby. Woo!
I-95 Derby, Atlantic Cup. We've named this thing a million different things.
Oh, I thought
I-95
was the official one we're still going with.
I don't even know anymore. All I know is that it is it is the oldest rivalry in MLS. These fan bases have hated each other for 30 years. The teams have kind of lost that over the years. It hasn't had the spark, and maybe we can get a little bit of that back with Troy Lesesne, of course, was a former manager of the Red Bulls last year. He's bringing his DC United club up. And look, it's going to be kind of an inverted way of playing where it's going to be DC United pressing and the Red Bulls keeping the ball on the ground and trying to build chances. We saw it last week with the fantastic young Swedish defender Noah Ayla playing a line-breaking pass through 2 lines and onto the foot of Elias Manuel, who just scorched one home. He has hit that pass repeatedly. And DC United, their front line, whether they play in a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2, those have been the 2 prominent sort of formations we've seen from them this year. They have to shut down that pass up the gut, especially because I think Lewis Morgan is going to be back for the Red Bulls. He, of course, was at the Euros with Scotland on international duty. He'll be back in the lineup. The Red Bulls, they'll be missing a number of players. DC United will be missing Christian Benteke. It's a rivalry, so maybe throw out the records, but also the Red Bulls are a much better team. Like, I bought DC United from moment 1 this year. I was wrong to do it. They just haven't had enough quality outside of Benteke, and with him not in the lineup, the Red Bulls, doesn't matter who you're missing, you have to get 3 points at home in this one.
Reports are that Frankie Amaya could be on his way out from the New York Red Bulls. How does that affect things? I
mean, Amaya's been a fantastic player this year. I believe it's a $4 or $5 million bid from Toluca, who are consistently one of the better teams in Liga MX. For Frankie, it makes a lot of sense because he could play his way into the Mexican national team that way. There's much more playing time available in central midfield for the Mexican team than for the U.S. national team. He's, of course, eligible for both. So I totally understand it. For the Red Bulls, with Peter Stroud coming back, I think Peter Stroud does a lot of the stuff that Amaya does, maybe adds a little more attacking pop as well. I understand it. It could leave them a little bit shorthanded in this one in games to come, but that's just the nature of the beast when you're managing in a Red Bull team, whether it's in Germany or Austria or Brazil or Harrison, New Jersey. You have to understand that there are going to be players developed and sold, and you have to compensate for that.
Finally, let's head out to Lumen Field. The Seattle Sounders taking on the Chicago Fire. Some cross-conference action for you. Both of these clubs below their respective playoff lines. Dunny, what comes to mind when you think about this matchup?
I want to know why we got drama in Seattle. Why we got drama where Raul Ruidiaz and Nuhu aren't happy with playing time or being subbed or whatever. Like, you took 7 points from 3 matches for the first time in what feels like forever. I mean, Craig Weibel must be able to smile and then be incredibly frustrated to see the way this has kind of transpired. Whatever happened between Brian Smetzer and those two, put it aside, guys. Like, you've been really bad to start this season, and then you finally start to find some momentum. I don't know how many games I've done with Seattle where it's felt like I've been told that De La Vega's return is right around the corner. That just seems like a fleeting image or a fleeting conversation because he's not fully fit and fully healthy after dealing with the 2 hamstring injuries. But Jordan Moore's firing in all cylinders, figuring out what Raul Ruidiaz looks like. You got to get more statistical numbers from Leo Chu. Alex Roldan, hopefully he's back sooner rather than later after the concussion and the head collision with Padelford in the early minutes of that match against Minnesota. Christian Roldan higher up the field. Albert's been really good. I think he's got 8 or 9 assists so far. The flip side, Chicago, my boy Frankie. Oh, my boy Frankie. It's a tough watch. Kuipers is a hunter. He's a poacher. He's starting to score goals. Give the keys of the Ferrari to Brian Gutierrez. Let him cook. Let him be the man in the middle. Whatever's happening with Shaqiri, he can do it at the international level. It's not working in Chicago. Chicago needs points. They need momentum. They need something. They need the continue of success to give them the belief that they can climb back into this race in the Eastern Conference, which is going to be a really difficult test for them.
I have to ask because you mentioned it. Shaqiri scoring an absolute banger at the Euros. Are you feeling promised by that if you're a Chicago Fire fan, or are you feeling disappointed?
I think you're feeling anger. I think you're feeling anger that he can, because that's the thing about Shaqiri, right? He's an incredible player, but you're looking for the consistency game in, game out, knowing that's the level that he's capable of. Now, listen, historically and statistically, it's been outrageous what he can do at the international level. And maybe he's just one of those players, because it's not just him, right? You could use maybe a James Rodriguez with Colombia, where domestic club football, the death of a true number 10, maybe there's a conversation there. But if you're Chicago Fire fans, that's the frustrating part, because you know what Shaqiri is capable of doing. You just haven't seen it in a consistent game-by-game, week-by-week basis for the Fire.
Well said. Brian Dunseth, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. Will you come back? Hopefully this group didn't scare you away too much.
If you'll have me. Yeah, if you'll have me.
You're always welcome. You're always welcome. Thank you so much. Big news this week out of San Jose. That's where the latest coaching departure has come. The San Jose Earthquakes parting ways after a season and a half with Luchi Gonzalez, and it has been bleak. Aside from the fact that San Jose sits at the bottom of the table in both conferences, 3 wins, a league worst, 14 losses, 0 clean sheets. I mean, the list goes on and on. Taylor, where do the Quakes go from here?
I think they just need to figure out who they want to be. I mean, with all due respect to Luchi Gonzalez, Luchi's a certain type of manager. He's got a certain style of play. And I don't think he was given the horses to run that race. Now, you could be critical of Luchi Gonzalez and say, well, maybe you don't want to do square pegs and round holes, and maybe you've got to find a way to grind out results. But many of us on this program and throughout the entire year have begged, urged the ownership and the front office to go sign the players, go out and get it. They said they were rumored to have Carlos Vela coming. That never came to fruition. They waited a long time to bring in Lopez. Listen, how long was Luchi there? 15, 16 months, whatever the number is. And there were promising signs last year. They got into the playoffs. But then this offseason was blah, to say the least. And then you're expecting him to all of a sudden right the ship. I don't think San Jose honestly knows who they want to be, especially in this league with more money, new rules, and everything coming this summer. Yeah. Matt, I just think it's a real struggle right now for that organization to figure out who they want to be.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there's 2 points I want to make. First is personnel. As you said, they struggled this offseason. They should have done, at least gotten Munoz in earlier, let him be a part of this team from February onwards. But beyond that, Diego Luna was in the Quakes Academy, essentially, and they chose between him and Cade Cowell for some reason instead of signing both. Fidel Barajas, who's also with RSL, he's a Bay Area kid, could have been in the Quakes Academy. They didn't move heaven and earth to acquire him, even though at this point, as a 17, 18-year-old, he is one of the best teenage playmakers by the numbers in MLS history. These are kids that could have been the core of a new Quakes team. And if they want to be Philadelphia Union West, which is what we all think they want, you have to make the most of your local talent. And they just haven't done that under multiple GMs now. They have to figure that out. That's even more important, I think, than nailing every single big signing, is figuring out that pathway.
Matt, there's no shortage of players in Northern California.
Yeah.
So you hit the nail on the head. If you don't want to spend big money on the big name players, that's absolutely fine. You can be Philadelphia Union, but you've got to make sure you hit home runs with the academy. And that's what I mean. They're halfway on everything. And I think if the ownership and front office all of a sudden flip the switch and they're uber committed of changing this thing, I don't think it's that long of a process. But I don't think it's fair to say to Luchi Gonzalez that it was all on him when you look at that roster and say, I'm not sure many managers are getting a ton out of that anyways.
Yeah, and the second point I want to make, to your point about not getting a lot out of it, last year, Daniel was, by the numbers, the best shot stopper in MLS. Per 90, he was better than Roman Berkey, who justifiably won goalkeeper of the year. Yeah, but Berkey played 1,000 more minutes. Coming into this season, virtually everyone who follows the league said Daniel's going to be the goalkeeper of the year. He played 3 games. He got hurt. They have had William Yarbrough since then. William Yarbrough, in the past, was a pretty good MLS goalkeeper. He has not been this year. In all, Quakes goalkeepers in 2024 have given up 15 more goals than expected. No manager is going to succeed like that. It's just not working with the guys that they have. And the front office has been too slow to address issues like this constantly over the years. And this year it was Luchi Gonzalez's. He was the one who paid the price.
In all fairness to Luchi Gonzalez, it's been a decade or more for the Quakes of struggles, and now they are one of 4 coaching openings in the league. You got San Jose, Dallas, Nashville, and Atlanta. You're a head coach looking for a job. Which team you want to go to?
None of them? No. I mean, I'll go first. I'll say that just from my point of view, Dallas has always been one of the more fun projects in MLS because they have that academy pipeline that we have talked about. And what we've seen over the past year is that they're now willing to spend a little bit. They went out and spent a record-breaking amount of money on Peter Musa, and he has delivered. And he's doing it kind of all by himself. And it feels like there's a rebuild coming. And the fun thing about Dallas is that rebuild is always going to come from within. I don't think the expectations are going to be at the same level that they would be in Atlanta, but you get a chance to work in Dallas. We've seen it over the years, and I think we'll see it again in this next generation coming through.
You're such a real one for that answer, Doyle.
No, yeah, Doyle, I love that you went Dallas because I know TT's going Atlanta, so I'm going Nashville. I think Nashville, I'm actually just leaving Atlanta to TT. I think Nashville's just such a fun project, though. They've had one manager there since the inaugural season of Major League Soccer. They've always been defensive-minded. You had players finally coming out and saying, like a Heine Mukhtar, I want to play football. I want to play a beautiful brand of football like a Wilfred Nancy, and they do have the players to do it. We know successful teams in Major League Soccer. It's the spine of the team. You have a U.S. men's national team defender with Walker Zimmerman. You have Heine Mukhtar leading the front line, MVP numerous years. I mean, this team's exciting. They do need a couple more pieces if they want to be a footballing team, but I think if you can get the right manager in to set a structure, implement a playing philosophy with this side, I think Nashville could be real fun. It's a great stadium, great fan support, and that place would be buzzing if they're playing attacking brand of football.
Kaylin, you got to get your mind off of Broadway. That's the only reason why you said that. You know it, I know it, and everybody else in the show. If anyone's saying first off, if anyone's saying anything other than Atlanta, you haven't paid attention for the last 5 years of what this ownership wants to do. Now you go out and get the heavy hitter in Garth Lagerwey. There's a rumor that you may have 2 of the 3 designated player spots available for the next 8 months if you get it. This is a home run. This is a gig that if you want to be big and bold and brash, then you want Atlanta United's job, and that's what Garth Lagerwey is going to do. I think he's going to be smart. I think he's going to take his time. But of the 4 jobs that are available right now, it's unequivocally Atlanta United, and everyone else is second.
Doyle, who is more likely to be a head coach, Taylor Twellman or Kalen Kyle?
Oh, man. Jill Sakovitz. I picked Jill.
That sounds terrifying. No, thank you. On that note, we'll see all of you next week. Enjoy a heck of a slate of matches this week for Taylor Twellman, Caitlin Kyle, Matt Doyle. I'm Jillian Sack.